Mr. Russo, thank you for your forthrightness in the questions so far, especially with Mr. D'Esposito. I just want to quickly follow up on his line of questioning, because our goal in this committee is to work together to make sure, as the ranking member alluded to, that the horrors of January 6th do not happen again. That's the ultimate goal of what we're trying to get to, and I think you would agree with that. To do that, though, we need to be able to get questions answered. We need to work with you and with the Capitol Police to make sure that we do get the information that we need to work with. And I asked these questions of the Chief of Police, and he agreed to this. And so the first question for the record is, will you commit to make all members of your staff available for questioning by the committee?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And the second question, will you commit to this committee that you or anyone on your staff will not take retaliatory action against any officer or employee of the United States Capitol Police and any employee of the Office of Inspector General?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for that, and that's what we expected, and look forward to working with you and your staff as we proceed down this path. Your predecessor, Michael Bolton, conducted a sweeping review of the Capitol Police following January 6th that many observers view as let's say a roadmap for improving Capitol Police. Have you re-examined Mr. Bolton's recommendations since you've been in this post?
I have.
What was your assessment?
I think they touched on all the important areas. You know, when you talk about the lack of command and control, the communication issues, the stifled intelligence gathering and coordination with outside agencies, and then you add in the equipment failures and lack of training, you know, all were contributing factors to the issues of January 6th. And I think the recommendations, 103 of them that focused specifically in those areas, really moved the ball downfield. I think they're wholeheartedly trying to implement these changes and trying to raise the bar.
When you first started as the Capitol Police Inspector General, how many outstanding recommendations from post-January 6th, or the post-January 6th flash report series remained outstanding? You
know, I'm not sure the exact number. I think that there was, we've closed somewhere maybe just south of 20 since I've gotten here.
So, but how many were open when you came in?
So maybe 30-something.
Okay.
I can get back to you with a more
my
exact.
recollection is maybe 37. I think you said out of 103, but if you could check on that,
Yes,
we'd
sir.
appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And did you say 14 are outstanding as of today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After going through a long period of time without much movement on these recommendations, it appears that recommendations were closed out more quickly after you arrived. Is this because you're really putting an effort into it, or do you have an explanation for the sudden rush to close out recommendations?
I don't. I think that we looked over some of these findings. We worked with the department. They would have questions about how closely they were to the finish line on some of them. And frankly, there were some of them that we could apply compensating controls. They were moving in the right direction. They met the spirit of the recommendation. And we're certainly going to follow up and evaluate the thoroughness of their work. But I think we were able to get a few closed through that.
Briefly explain. So Capitol Police, they say that they've met a recommendation. How do you evaluate whether it's actually been completed or not?
So they do furnish us information. Let's say it's a policy enhancement. They actually have to provide us that policy. In some case, they show evidence that it was disseminated to the rank and file. Whatever we need to feel comfortable that the remedy is in place. Okay.
Something you said just a moment ago just raises a red flag. You used the term "in the spirit of." Would you, that rings to me as maybe it's not totally done, or maybe it was done not exactly as the recommendation said, but it was in the spirit of it. Would you ever close a recommendation because the Capitol Police indicated they were taking steps in the spirit of the recommendation, even though they haven't totally completed it or completed it as was recommended?
So it's possible they didn't fulfill the letter of the recommendation, and yet we felt comfortable enough that the risk no longer existed and it could be closed.
So I guess my question then would lead into if there was recommendations that were there that you evaluated from Mr. Bolton that you thought were the right things to do, but yet you closed them out in the spirit of it may not be exactly the way it is. Is that what I'm understanding? Is they may not have been done exactly the way that it was recommended?
Well, and I'll give you an example. My predecessor closed one out after it was said every member of the agency needs a top secret clearance. After discussions with the department, they acquiesced and determined that as long as the department finds certain key positions that would require that and make it voluntary, they closed it out. So this can happen from time to time if the department can demonstrate to you that they're meeting that spirit, ultimately getting that security background and clearance with certain positions. Sometimes you can modify your approach and get that closed.
So this will be my last question this round. I'll save the others because I think this is important here. So you close out a recommendation, even though it isn't precisely what the recommendation is. I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
Is that a fair way of saying, yes, we've actually met this recommendation, or do you annotate that we've modified the recommendation and it's not exactly the way it was? And the illustration you gave, I can agree with that. Are there others that have been done in the spirit of that may not have actually been per the letter of the recommendation? That some closed out in the spirit of a recommendation.
Yeah, it's hard to come up with it. You know, I'm thinking of one that is more clerical, you know, where they had a batch of policies that were basically ready to go, but they had the wrong acronym for the division. The division name had since changed, and they ended up sending out a directive to the affected parties, making sure everybody knew with that one administrative issue. They need to follow up and clean up those policies, but in the short term, they're able to get the bigger part of that guidance out to the affected people. So, okay. You know, I think there's a few ways to answer that question, Chairman,
well,
but, you know, for the most part, that's why I say spirit of we want to try to get the corrections in place.
Okay. Yes, thank you, and I appreciate the ranking member. I was going to cut myself off because we're going over time, but as the rules say, in consultation, we gave you a little bit more time. I'm going to continue on with that line of questioning when we come back to round two. I have a little bit more